August 12, 1943. Rabaul Harbour, New Britain Island. Dawn broke hesitantly through a veil of tropical mist as Commander Toshikazu Miyamoto stood on the weather-beaten dock, his weathered hands clasped behind his back, watching as the American vessel was slowly towed into the harbour. The landing craft had been captured nearly intact during a failed American raid on a neighbouring island, and now it sat before him, a prize of war that the Imperial Japanese Navy hoped might reveal some secret advantage. Little did Commander Miyamoto suspect that this unremarkable vessel would shatter everything he believed about the conflict that engulfed the Pacific. "This simple boat will tell us nothing we do not already know about our enemy," Lieutenant Hideki Sato remarked confidently beside him. "American engineering is crude but effective, nothing that would concern the engineers of the Imperial Navy." Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. What transpired over the next 72 hours would transform the understanding of not just Commander Miyamoto and his team, but would reveal the true nature of the industrial juggernaut they were facing. An economic reality that would ultimately determine the outcome of the Pacific War far more decisively than any single battle or act of heroism. Commander Toshikazu Miyamoto had earned his reputation through 15 years of dedicated service to the Imperial Japanese Navy. A graduate of the Naval Engineering Academy in Tokyo, he had helped design several of Japan's most advanced destroyers. His analytical mind and attention to detail had earned him the respect of his peers and superiors alike. Now, at 42 years of age, his expertise was being called upon to assess this American landing craft, designated as a Higgins boat by intelligence reports, that had been captured with only minor damage. The vessel looked deceptively simple, a boxy, flat-bottomed boat with a ramp at the front, capable of carrying 36 fully equipped troops from ship to shore. Yet Miyamoto knew that simplicity often masked innovation, and he was determined to understand every aspect of this craft that had apparently allowed the Americans to project power across the vast Pacific with such surprising effectiveness. "Lieutenant Sato, assemble the engineering team. I want this vessel taken apart piece by piece. Every component is to be catalogued, measured, and analyzed. Chief Petty Officer Tanaka will document everything with the camera. Ensign Watanabe, retrieve all available intelligence reports on American landing craft operations. We begin immediately." Across the harbor, Captain William Donovan of United States Naval Intelligence sat in a makeshift prison cell, contemplating his circumstances. Captured during the same operation that had yielded the landing craft, the 38-year-old intelligence officer from Connecticut had managed to maintain his cover as a junior lieutenant. His real mission, to assess Japanese defensive capabilities in the region, had been compromised, but his true rank and importance remained unknown to his captors. "The prisoner will be questioned again this afternoon," Major Kenji Yamada informed the guards outside the cell. As the head of counterintelligence operations in Rabaul, Yamada had conducted dozens of interrogations and prided himself on his ability to extract information. Perhaps today he will be more forthcoming about American plans for this region. Donovan had revealed nothing of significance in previous sessions, providing only information that Japanese intelligence already possessed. His training had prepared him well, but he knew that each interrogation brought increased risk of revealing something valuable. Back at the dock, the examination of the landing craft had begun in earnest. Chief Engineer Takahashi, a civilian contractor with 25 years of experience in naval architecture, crawled through the vessel's mechanical spaces with Lieutenant Sato. "Notice the simplicity of the drive system, Lieutenant," Takahashi observed. "The Americans have prioritized reliability and ease of repair over sophistication. This reduction gear assembly, look how the housing is designed to be removed with basic tools." Sato nodded, making notes on his clipboard. "The materials are not exceptional either. Standard marine-grade steel and aluminum alloys, nothing we cannot produce ourselves." "Perhaps," Takahashi replied, "but observe these welds and fasteners. The consistency is remarkable." This was not handcrafted. This was mass-produced with very precise machinery. By midday, the team had removed the Higgins boat's engine, a simple yet robust diesel power plant that provided adequate propulsion for the landing craft's needs. Commander Miyamoto examined it carefully, noting the serial number cast into the engine block. 287459, he read aloud. Lieutenant, make sure this is recorded precisely. As the examination continued, Ensign Watanabe arrived with a stack of intelligence files. Commander, I have brought all available reports on American landing craft production and deployment as you requested. Miyamoto nodded, taking the files without looking up from the engine components spread before him. Very good. Place them in my office. I will review them this evening. The day progressed with methodical examination. Every component was carefully removed, documented, and analyzed. Measurements were taken, materials identified, and manufacturing techniques assessed. Commander Miyamoto insisted on thoroughness, knowing that understanding the enemy's equipment was crucial to countering their tactics. By evening, the team had disassembled much of the craft's mechanical systems. As the tropical sun began to set, casting long shadows across the harbor, Miyamoto dismissed his tired men. We will continue tomorrow at dawn. Lieutenant Sato, ensure all components are secured and guarded overnight. In his Spartan quarters that evening, Commander Miyamoto spread the intelligence reports across his desk and began to read by the light of a single lamp. Most contained information he already knew. The Americans were building landing craft in significant numbers, allowing them to conduct amphibious operations throughout the Pacific. But one report caught his attention, a reference to something called the New Orleans Production Facility. According to the report, based on intercepted communications and prisoner interrogations, this facility was producing Higgins boats at an astonishing rate, allegedly hundreds per month from a single location. Miyamoto found this claim absurd. Japan's entire naval production capability could not match such numbers for vessels of this type. American propaganda, he muttered to himself, designed to intimidate us with false claims of production capacity. The following morning, the team reassembled at the dock and continued their work. As they removed more components from the landing craft, Chief Engineer Takahashi made an interesting discovery. "Commander, look at this," he said, pointing to several parts that bore identical serial numbers. "These components all have sequential numbering. This suggests they were produced in large batches." Miyamoto examined the parts carefully. "Most interesting. And look here, these manufacturing dates, all within the same week in March of this year." Lieutenant Sato joined them, bringing another component. "Sir, this hydraulic assembly for the bow ramp has similar markings. Serial number 287462, just 3 units apart from the engine block we examined yesterday." A pattern was beginning to emerge, one that troubled Commander Miyamoto. If these serial numbers were accurate, they suggested a production scale beyond what he had believed possible. Across the base, Captain Donovan was being led to another interrogation session with Major Yamada. "Good morning, Lieutenant," Yamada said, as Donovan was seated across from him. "I trust you slept well." "As well as can be expected," Donovan replied evenly. "Today I thought we might discuss something different," Yamada said, sliding a photograph across the table. "This landing craft of yours that we captured, an interesting design. Tell me about its production." Donovan glanced at the photo without showing any reaction. "Standard Higgins boat. I'm not an engineer, Major, I just ride in them." "Come now, Lieutenant. Even a junior officer such as yourself must have some knowledge of your country's industrial capacity. How many of these craft has America produced for this war?" Donovan shrugged. "Thousands, I suppose. They're coming off the assembly lines all over the country. New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Detroit, they're being built everywhere." Yamada studied Donovan's face for signs of deception, but found none. The American seemed to be stating what he believed to be common knowledge. "Thousands?" Yamada repeated. "From multiple facilities? You expect me to believe this?" Donovan looked genuinely confused. "It's no secret, Major. Higgins Industries alone was producing a boat every hour at one point. Everyone knows this." The interrogation continued for another hour, but Yamada gained little additional information. What troubled him was not Donovan's reluctance to share information, but rather his matter-of-fact statements about American production capabilities, as if the numbers were so ordinary they weren't even worth concealing. By mid-afternoon, Commander Miyamoto's team had fully disassembled the landing craft. Components were arranged systematically on tarps, spread across the dock, creating an exploded view of the entire vessel. 187 unique components, Lieutenant Sato reported. Most show evidence of mass production techniques, die casting, stamping, automated welding, very few hand-finished parts. Miyamoto walked slowly along the display, examining key components. The design philosophy behind the craft was becoming clear: simplicity, standardization, and ease of assembly. This was not a craft designed by engineers seeking perfection. This was a craft designed to be built quickly in vast numbers by minimally skilled workers. "Lieutenant, have you catalogued all the serial numbers as I requested?" "Yes, Commander," Sato replied, handing him a neatly written list. "Most components that would typically require replacement or maintenance have identification numbers. I have organized them by component type." Miyamoto studied the list carefully. The pattern he had begun to notice earlier was now unmistakable. Many components had sequential or near-sequential serial numbers. The implications were disturbing. "Chief Takahashi, based on your experience with manufacturing processes, what production volume would be necessary to explain these serial number sequences?" The chief engineer considered the question carefully. To have so many components with such closely sequenced numbers, they would need to be producing these craft in large batches, dozens, perhaps hundreds at a time from the same factory. That evening, Miyamoto requested a meeting with Rear Admiral Takeo Kurita, the senior naval officer at Rabaul. In the Admiral's office, Miyamoto presented his preliminary findings. "Admiral, my examination of the American landing craft has yielded concerning insights into enemy production capabilities," Miyamoto began. "The evidence suggests these vessels are being mass-produced at a scale that exceeds our previous estimates." Admiral Kurita, a veteran of numerous naval engagements, looked skeptical. "Commander, American propaganda constantly exaggerates their industrial output. What specific evidence have you found that supports these claims?" Miyamoto placed his notes on the Admiral's desk. "The manufacturing techniques, the standardization of components, the sequential serial numbers, all indicate an assembly line approach to production. More importantly, the dates stamped on various components suggest this particular vessel was assembled from parts manufactured within a 2-week period. Such rapid production would require facilities of enormous capacity." The Admiral leaned forward, his interest piqued. "And how does this compare to our own landing craft production?" "Sir, our largest naval yard produces approximately 20 landing craft per month, with each requiring significant hand finishing by skilled craftsmen. The evidence suggests the Americans may be producing that many in a single day from just one facility." Admiral Kurita's expression darkened. "That is difficult to believe, Commander. Continue your analysis and provide me with a full written report. Include any intelligence that might corroborate these production estimates." The next morning, Commander Miyamoto decided to take a different approach. Rather than further disassembly, he ordered the team to begin reassembling the landing craft, paying careful attention to the design choices that facilitated rapid assembly. "Notice how these sections align with minimal adjustment," he pointed out to Lieutenant Sato. "The tolerances are precise enough for consistent fit, yet forgiving enough to allow quick assembly by workers with limited training." As they worked, Major Yamada approached the dock, accompanied by 2 guards escorting Captain Donovan. "Commander Miyamoto," Yamada called out, "I thought our prisoner might be able to provide some insights about the vessel. He claims to have limited technical knowledge, but perhaps seeing the craft might prompt useful recollections." Miyamoto nodded, studying the American officer with interest. "Very well. Lieutenant Sato, continue the reassembly. I will speak with the prisoner." Stepping away from the activity, Miyamoto addressed Donovan directly. "Your vessel has interesting design elements, Lieutenant. Very practical." Donovan shrugged. "They get the job done. Nothing fancy about a Higgins boat." "Indeed," Miyamoto agreed. "May I ask, are all American landing craft produced to the same standard?" "We have encountered some variation in captured equipment." "Standard is the key word," Donovan replied carefully. "Mr. Higgins was big on standardization. makes them easier to build and easier to repair in the field. Parts are interchangeable across the entire fleet. Miyamoto noted the pride in the American's voice when he spoke of this standardization, as if it were a virtue rather than a compromise. "And how many of these vessels typically support an amphibious operation?" Miyamoto asked, watching Donovan's expression closely. "Depends on the operation," Donovan answered with a shrug. "For a major landing, hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 for something big. That's why they're built the way they are. You need a lot of them, and they take a beating." Miyamoto managed to keep his expression neutral, but the casual mention of deploying over 1,000 landing craft for a single operation staggered him. Even accounting for American exaggeration, the scale was difficult to comprehend. After Donovan was taken back to his cell, Miyamoto rejoined his team at the dock. As they continued reassembling the vessel, he found himself looking at it with new eyes. What had initially seemed like an unremarkable, even crude design now appeared as something else entirely, a perfect embodiment of American industrial philosophy. That evening, Miyamoto requested access to the Naval Headquarters Communications Center. He sent an urgent request to Tokyo for any available intelligence on American shipyards, particularly those producing landing craft. He also requested information on a name the prisoner had mentioned, Higgins. The following morning, as the team completed the reassembly of the landing craft, a messenger arrived with a response from Tokyo. The intelligence packet contained several reports, including translated excerpts from American newspapers and industrial journals, as well as analysis from Japanese agents in the United States before the war. Miyamoto took the documents to his office and began reading immediately. What he found both confirmed his growing suspicions and revealed the true magnitude of what they were facing. Andrew Jackson Higgins was identified as the owner of Higgins Industries, based in New Orleans. Before the war, his company had built boats for various commercial purposes. In 1942, after receiving government contracts, Higgins had expanded operations dramatically, constructing vast new facilities dedicated to landing craft production. One intelligence report, based on public information from American media, described the main Higgins plant as operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, with over 10,000 workers across multiple shifts. The plant reportedly produced one fully completed landing craft every hour. Miyamoto read this figure several times, trying to grasp its implications. 1 vessel per hour, 24 per day, over 700 per month, from just one factory. And according to other intelligence in the packet, Higgins Industries was just one of several companies producing landing craft for the American war effort. Another document contained a transcript of an American radio broadcast discussing production achievements. It mentioned the Liberty ship program, cargo vessels being built in as little as 4 days per ship. The numbers seemed fantastical, yet multiple sources confirmed them. As Commander Miyamoto digested this information, he began to understand that they were not merely fighting the American armed forces, they were fighting the entire American industrial base, a production capacity so vast it dwarfed Japan's capabilities by orders of magnitude. He requested a meeting with both Admiral Kurita and Major Yamada to present his findings. In the Admiral's office that afternoon, Miyamoto laid out the evidence methodically. "The landing craft we captured is not exceptional in any technical sense," he explained. "Its significance lies in what it represents about American production methodology. Every aspect of its design reflects a focus on mass production, standardized components, simplified assembly, materials chosen for availability rather than optimal performance." Miyamoto placed the intelligence reports on the Admiral's desk. "These documents confirm what the physical evidence suggests. The Americans are producing these vessels at a rate we cannot match. Higgins Industries alone produces more landing craft in 1 month than our entire naval program does in a year." Admiral Kurita studied the reports with a deepening frown. "Commander, are you certain these figures are accurate? American propaganda often exaggerates their capabilities." "Sir, I have cross-referenced multiple sources. While some variation exists in the reports, even the most conservative estimates indicate production rates far beyond our capacity. Furthermore, the physical evidence from the captured craft supports these figures. The standardization, the serial numbering, the manufacturing dates, all are consistent with mass production on an enormous scale. Major Yamada, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. The prisoner made similar claims during interrogation. I had dismissed them as exaggeration or misinformation, but they align with Commander Miyamoto's findings. Admiral Kurita rose from his desk and walked to the window overlooking the harbor. For several moments, he gazed out at the Japanese warships at anchor, vessels that represented the culmination of Japanese naval engineering, each one crafted with exacting standards by skilled workers over many months. If these figures are accurate, he said finally, what are the strategic implications, Commander? Miyamoto had been considering this question since his discoveries began. Admiral, it means that our strategy of attrition cannot succeed. We have been operating under the assumption that by inflicting sufficient losses, we could degrade the American ability to project power across the Pacific. But if they can replace vessels faster than we can sink them, and crews faster than we can remove them, then time works against us, not for us. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Japan had begun the war with a significant advantage in naval power in the Pacific. Its ships, planes, and crews were among the best in the world, but that qualitative edge was being overwhelmed by American quantitative superiority, a superiority that grew more pronounced with each passing month. There is another factor to consider, Miyamoto continued. The manufacturing approach evident in this landing craft likely extends to all American war production. Ships, aircraft, tanks, weapons. They have sacrificed craftsmanship for volume, quality for quantity. But when the quantity reaches a certain threshold, it creates a quality all its own, the quality of overwhelming mass. In the days that followed, Commander Miyamoto completed his formal report on the captured landing craft. He detailed its technical specifications, its design philosophy, and its implications for American production capacity. He included analysis of the intelligence reports that corroborated his findings, as well as strategic recommendations. The report was transmitted to Naval Headquarters in Tokyo, where it joined similar assessments from other fronts, all pointing to the same conclusion. America's industrial might was transforming the nature of the Pacific War in ways that Japan's pre-war planning had failed to anticipate. 6 months later, February 1944, Truk Lagoon, Caroline Islands. Commander Miyamoto stood on the bridge of the destroyer Yukikaze, watching as American carrier aircraft swarmed overhead. Operation Hailstone, a massive American attack on what had once been Japan's most formidable naval base in the Central Pacific, was underway. Multiple squadrons approaching from the northeast, Commander, the lookout reported. Torpedo bombers and dive bombers with fighter escort. Miyamoto nodded grimly. Since his examination of the captured landing craft at Rabaul, he had been reassigned to frontline duty as American forces pushed inexorably westward across the Pacific. The strategic situation had deteriorated exactly as he had feared. American industrial capacity was now being translated directly into overwhelming combat power. As the Yukikaze maneuvered desperately to avoid the attacking aircraft, Miyamoto found himself recalling the landing craft he had examined. That simple vessel had revealed the true nature of the conflict. Not a contest between military forces, but between industrial systems. Japan's skilled craftsmen producing finely crafted weapons in limited numbers, against America's vast factories turning out standardized equipment in overwhelming quantities. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Nishimura, the Yukikaze's executive officer, appeared at his side. Engineering reports all systems functioning normally. We are ready to increase speed when ordered. Miyamoto nodded. Very good, Nishimura. We will need every knot of speed today. Nishimura hesitated, then spoke in a lower voice. Commander, I read your report on American production capabilities last year. At the time, I thought the numbers must be exaggerated. Now, seeing this, he gestured at the sky filled with American aircraft. I understand your conclusions were correct. Not my conclusions, Nishimura. The evidence spoke for itself. I merely documented what I observed. Later that day, As the Yukikaze made a high-speed run through the lagoon to assist a damaged cruiser, Miyamoto observed dozens of American Hellcat fighters orbiting above. Each represented hundreds of man-hours of production capacity that Japan simply could not match. And behind each fighter were dozens more, waiting on aircraft carrier decks to replace any losses. As darkness fell, the Yukikaze had survived, though many other Japanese vessels had not been so fortunate. Truk, once considered impregnable, had been devastated in a single day of attacks. As Miyamoto stood on the bridge in the gathering darkness, he reflected on how completely his understanding of the war had been transformed by that captured landing craft. The Americans were not winning through superior tactics or courage, though they possessed both in ample measure. They were winning through production schedules, assembly lines, and standardized parts. The landing craft had embodied this approach perfectly, nothing exceptional in its design or construction, yet exceptional in what it represented about American industrial capability. 2 months later, Commander Miyamoto was transferred to the Naval Staff College in Tokyo to share his insights with future naval leaders. His experience with the captured landing craft had been formalized into a case study on American production techniques and their strategic implications. In a classroom filled with promising young officers, Miyamoto explained the lessons he had learned. The Americans approach warfare as they approach manufacturing, with an emphasis on standardization, simplicity, and scale. Their landing craft may seem crude compared to our more precisely crafted vessels, but they are produced in such numbers that they achieve strategic significance through sheer volume. A young lieutenant raised his hand. "Commander, how can we counter this industrial advantage? If we cannot match their production volume, what strategy should we pursue?" It was the question Miyamoto had been wrestling with for months. "There is no simple answer, Lieutenant. Our advantages lie in different areas, in the skill and spirit of our personnel, in our ability to innovate within our constraints. But we must recognize the reality of American production capacity and develop strategies that do not rely on winning a war of attrition." After the lecture, Admiral Soemu Toyoda, Chief of the Naval General Staff, requested a private meeting with Miyamoto. In the Admiral's office, surrounded by naval charts showing the shrinking perimeter of Japanese control in the Pacific, Toyoda asked for Miyamoto's honest assessment. "You have studied American production capabilities more thoroughly than perhaps any other officer," Toyoda said. "Speaking candidly, what are the implications for our long-term strategy?" Miyamoto chose his words carefully. "Admiral, the examination of that captured landing craft revealed more than technical details. It revealed a fundamental asymmetry in this conflict. The Americans can replace losses faster than we can inflict them. Each vessel we sink, each aircraft we shoot down, is quickly replaced. Our losses, however, are increasingly difficult to replace." Toyoda nodded slowly. "And your recommendation? We must seek a negotiated peace, while we still retain sufficient strength to influence the terms. The alternative is a prolonged conflict that will end with the complete destruction of our naval and air forces, followed by the invasion of the home islands." The Admiral did not immediately respond. Both men understood the political reality. Such a recommendation, however strategically sound, would be unacceptable to many in the military leadership and government. "Your analysis will be considered, Commander," Toyoda said finally. "Continue your work at the Staff College. Our future officers must understand the true nature of this conflict." 1 year later, April 1945, Tokyo Bay, Commander Miyamoto, now serving on the staff of the Combined Fleet Headquarters, stood at the window of his office watching American B-29 bombers passing overhead. Air raid sirens wailed across the city, but the attacks had become so frequent that many citizens barely reacted anymore. On his desk lay the latest intelligence assessment. American forces were preparing for the invasion of Okinawa. The massive fleet assembled for this operation included hundreds of the landing craft he had studied 2 years earlier, Higgins boats carrying troops from ships to shore in an endless stream. Lieutenant Sato, who had been reassigned to Tokyo after the withdrawal from Rabaul, entered the office with a fresh stack of reports. "The latest production estimates from our intelligence services, Commander," he said, placing the documents on the desk. American shipyards have now produced over 23,000 landing craft of various types since 1941. Miyamoto nodded absently. The number was staggering, yet no longer surprising. The industrial disparity he had glimpsed through his examination of a single captured vessel had proven to be even greater than he had initially estimated. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Any news of Captain Takahashi?" The chief engineer who had helped examine the landing craft at Rabaul had been reassigned to Truk and had been missing since the American attack there. "Nothing confirmed, sir. His ship was among those lost." Miyamoto turned back to the window. The contrails of the B-29 bombers crisscrossed the sky above Tokyo, visible evidence of America's industrial might. Each bomber represented thousands of man-hours of production capacity, yet they appeared over Japan in formations of hundreds, day after day. "When we examined that landing craft at Rabaul," Miyamoto said quietly, "we were seeing only a small piece of a much larger picture. Had we truly understood what it represented at that moment, perhaps different decisions might have been made." Sato stepped beside him at the window. "The craft itself was unremarkable, sir. It was what it represented that mattered." "Exactly, Lieutenant. Not the vessel, but the system that produced it. One vessel every hour, 24 hours per day, month after month. While our skilled craftsmen labored to produce a handful of vessels with exquisite care, their factories poured forth an endless stream of standardized craft, different philosophies of production and of war." As summer turned to autumn, Japan's situation grew increasingly desperate. American forces had secured Okinawa after a brutal campaign, placing them within striking distance of the home islands. The bombing of Japanese cities continued unabated, and the naval blockade had reduced imports of vital raw materials to a trickle. In early August, as rumors of a potentially devastating new American weapon circulated through military headquarters, Miyamoto was summoned to a meeting with several senior staff officers. The topic was a contingency plan for the expected American invasion, an operation that would involve thousands of the landing craft he had studied. "Our estimates suggest the Americans will deploy between 4,000 and 7,000 landing vessels of various types," General Yoshijiro Umezu explained, pointing to a map of the probable landing beaches. "Their first wave alone may include up to 100,000 troops." Miyamoto studied the map, recalling his findings from 2 years earlier. "Those estimates align with American production capabilities. The landing craft I examined in Rabaul was designed specifically for this type of operation, to deliver large numbers of troops directly onto beaches in rapid succession. Their entire amphibious doctrine is built around the availability of these vessels in vast numbers." The meeting continued for several hours as the officers discussed defensive preparations. But underlying all the tactical considerations was the reality Miyamoto had identified long ago. They were facing not just American troops and equipment, but the entire American industrial system, a system capable of producing war materials in quantities that Japan could not match. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender. World War II in the Pacific, which had begun with stunning Japanese victories across a vast ocean, had ended with American forces poised to invade the Japanese home islands. In the naval headquarters in Tokyo, Commander Miyamoto listened to the Emperor's broadcast with a mixture of grief and resignation. The war's outcome, he believed, had been determined not on the battlefield, but on the factory floor, a conclusion he had reached 2 years earlier while examining a captured landing craft in Rabaul Harbor. 5 years later, April 1950, San Diego, California. Toshikazu Miyamoto, now a civilian engineering consultant working with the American occupation authorities in Japan, stood on a dock watching a demonstration of the latest American landing craft. He had been invited to the United States as part of a technical exchange program, his wartime analysis of American production techniques having earned him respect among American naval officers. Beside him stood Andrew Higgins, Jr., son of the industrialist, whose company had produced the landing craft Miyamoto had examined at Rabaul. The younger Higgins had taken over much of his father's business operations and was explaining recent innovations in amphibious vessel design. "The basic philosophy remains unchanged," Higgins was saying, standardization, simplicity, maintainability. During the war, we were producing one vessel every 60 minutes at peak capacity. Of course, we've scaled back considerably since then. Miyamoto nodded, studying the craft before him. It was an evolved design, but clearly descended from the vessel he had dismantled piece by piece 7 years earlier. Your father's approach to production was most illuminating to me during the war, Miyamoto said carefully. I had the opportunity to examine one of his craft in detail at Rabaul in 1943. Oh, Higgins looked interested. One of ours was captured intact. Yes, my team disassembled it completely. The serial numbers and manufacturing dates told a story more powerful than any intelligence report. They revealed the true scale of American industrial capacity. Higgins laughed. Dad would appreciate that. He always said the real hero of the war wasn't any general or admiral. It was American manufacturing, folks working 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week, turning out standardized parts that could be assembled quickly anywhere in the world. As they walked along the dock, Miyamoto reflected on how thoroughly his understanding of warfare had been transformed by that captured landing craft. The vessel itself had been unremarkable, a simple, practical design built for a specific purpose. What had been remarkable was what it represented. An industrial system capable of producing such vessels by the thousand, overwhelming any adversary through sheer numerical superiority. Mr. Higgins, Miyamoto said as they paused to watch the landing craft demonstration, your father's vessels changed the nature of amphibious warfare. But more than that, they exemplified a different approach to war production, one that proved decisive. Higgins nodded thoughtfully. Dad used to say that. He told the War Production Board once that wars aren't won by the best weapons. They're won by good enough weapons in overwhelming numbers. Quality matters, but after a certain point, quantity becomes a quality all its own. It was a sentiment Miyamoto had expressed in his reports to Tokyo, reports that had accurately predicted the course of the Pacific War but had not been able to change its outcome. The simple landing craft he had examined at Rabaul had revealed the true nature of modern industrial warfare, a lesson that would shape military thinking for generations to come. Later that evening, as Miyamoto stood on the balcony of his hotel room overlooking San Diego Harbor, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The captured landing craft at Rabaul had offered a glimpse into America's industrial might, a might that had ultimately determined the outcome of the Pacific War far more decisively than any battle. The lesson he had learned from that examination continued to resonate. In modern warfare, the factory could be more powerful than the battlefield. The humble Higgins boat, with its simple design and standardized components, had embodied this truth perfectly, not through any technical superiority, but through the industrial system that had produced it in such overwhelming numbers. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II, and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.